What's up, outliers? Quick market update for you before the surprise live stream later today, 5 p.m. Pacific time. We are getting out there and back at it. So taking a quick look at the market today, it was a little bit of a follow through day. That's mostly what I saw, which I thought was kind of interesting, but we are still seeing a pretty big divergence at this point between large cap and small cap. So when I look at the Qs and I look at SPY, you can see that they both had really big green days today. Essentially, the overwhelming majority of volume was buy volume, and it's just kind of this almost parabolic recovery up and out. Whereas when I'm looking at IWM, it's still recovering, but it's not really moving anywhere near the same degree as where we're at in these others. And again, like a quick reference for that is take a look at where they're closing in on pre-drop from the first and then the second. So over the first and the second on SPY and Qs, it's already capturing most of that move back, and it's closing in on where it was at on the first. That is not the case for small caps. We're not even halfway. I find that really, really interesting because the market so far has continued to be what I consider to be fairly erratic and really, really sensitive to movements. And what's even most interesting still is the timing of this has become very curious because the probability of a rate cut, if I grab the Fed watch tool for us to take a quick look at together, the probability of a rate cut still is pegged at essentially 100%. So here you go. You could take a look here. I guess I got to move it over to this side. I got to get used to that now. I'm so used to being on the other side. But you can see the probability of a rate cut here. So if we poke through this quickly, we can see if we look at the probabilities here, it's now teetering back to a half point cut, but it's pegged at least a quarter point cut, if not a half point cut. I find that interesting because a big part of this move that we saw here, in my opinion, was the expectation of a cut. But now the expectation of a cut is even higher, and we're not making that kind of parabolic shift. So that I find to be slightly interesting. I don't know if there's necessarily a ton to read into it just yet. It's kind of one of those FYI bits of information, in my opinion. That's at least how I'm treating it. Now, when I look across earnings so far, we did have an interesting earnings release today. Home Depot, if you didn't have a chance to look through it, you should. But essentially, they're talking about some softening in the consumer. And Home Depot overall still performed really well. They came in at 467 against 454 expected earnings per share. So they did fine. They still beat. But one of the comments I picked up from the release is that they were talking about a slightly, here you go, the consumer paused in July. You can kind of see right now I'm in the way on this side. Unbelievable. No matter what I do, I'm in the way. But it's this line item here. I thought that that was interesting to keep an eyeball on. So overall, when I look at the market writ large, I see net highs lows still trending negative. The fact that net highs lows is trending negative, it tells me that this movement is being really, really propped up by a small handful of names. And I can see gross highs expanding and gross lows decreasing, but still net is negative. So I also find that generally interesting from a market synthesis perspective. Now, let's take a quick look over at our friend GME, see what's going on in here. And we are essentially just trending sideways, which is good, I think. The fact that we're consolidating as we are here bodes relatively well for the stock. It kind of found its threshold here, really ran into strong support, strong buy volume, popped it back up. And it's kind of been running sideways here, which is okay. Because if you look at the performance of small caps here, it's also good, but it's not great. So GameStop to me essentially just looks like it's waiting for some sort of catalyst. That's the overwhelming sensation that I get as I look at the stock. Now, we are below the point of control still, which is important to note. The other thing is, as I look at OI, I'm seeing about 700,000 calls against 341,000 puts. So put OI is still expanding a bit. Now, one of the things I'm curious about is this 16 AUG OI is 290,000 out of that 696. It's a big bucket. So one of the things I am going to be looking for throughout the rest of this week is to see if people are continuing to do what we tend to see them do, which is reposition into the next expiration cycle. The next primary expiration is 20 September, which is kind of like this red-ish, orangish red. And I don't see a lot in there yet. I see a little bit here, which looks like the 30s. There is 10,000 OI there now, people building out to that. But the other thing to keep in mind is that we have earnings coming up on the 4th of September before the market. So the other expiration cycle I expect to see get way more busy is this 6th SEP. But again, as I already pointed out, that I can't help but find interesting is that the vol is still so low in here. I really would anticipate this growing a bit. So GameStop right now, overwhelming sensation is kind of a bit of a holding pattern. The options aren't showing me anything that's like super interesting just yet. We are still seeing a healthy mix of order flow across different prices. Most of the bigger transactions are super far out in time. So the 16 Jan 26, 25, so much further out in time. There was this trade here in 16 Aug 24, the 23 calls, 349 of them came out. These were sold. So this looks like probably covered calls would be my best guess. So this is not an insignificant size position, but it's nothing insanely large just yet. So generally, quiet day. I was texting with Newton a little bit earlier. I'm still under the weather, but seems like he's starting to feel better. So shout out to Newton. Hope you feel better, brother. And then we'll see about when we can get back on for another GME live stream. But first, got to focus on healing. As always, if there's anything you need, be an outlier. See you guys later.